Another long-awaited crypto ETF liftoff has finally arrived, and when they opened for trade this morning, volume for the 9 spot Ethereum ETF spiked, but the price is going in the other direction, at least at the moment. Grayscale, Franklin Templeton, Invesco Galaxy, VanEck, and BlackRock shares lower by about anywhere from 0.5%, 1/3%, to more than 2.75%. The ETFs track Ether. That's the native cryptocurrency of the Ethereum blockchain. Now, in the hour before the ETFs launched, Ether itself crossed the $3,500 mark. Right now, it's pulled back just a bit. It's at $3,488. And by the way, it's up 53% year to date, maybe in anticipation of what's happening today, the launch of the ETFs. Do at least the losses for the spot Ether ETFs indicate enthusiasm for crypto ETFs has disappeared into the ether? Or is this a historic moment presaging major adoption? BlackRock head of active ETFs, Jay Jacobs, is here with crypto bull Anthony Pompliano of Pomp Investments. Jay, you guys have ETHA, ETHA. That's the iShares Ether spot ETF. Tell me about the first day. How's it going? Because I know that in the first, 15 minutes, all of them collectively crossed about $112 million in volume.
Yeah, and ETH's traded over $200 million today. Very orderly markets, tight bid-ask spreads, and a lot of investor interest. So I think this is as great of a start as we could expect. The key here is that investors are using this tool as intended. It is a efficient, convenient vehicle to get access to Ether, which, as we've seen with the launch of iBit this year and the interest in Bitcoin, there's a lot of investor interest in getting digital asset exposure through ETFs.
Why is yours down just 0.2%, whereas some of these others are down 2.6%. Don't you all do the same thing?
We should all be trading relatively tightly. I think there's some nuances around market activity and trading, but at the end of the day, we are holding spot Ethereum, and our ETF is going to track very, very closely to what spot Ethereum is doing in the direct markets within Ethereum.
At the end of the day, what will the volume hit, in your opinion?
I think collectively for this complex, it's going to be over $1 billion traded.
What was Bitcoin spot ETF day?
It was a few multiples of that, but this is still an extraordinary amount of trading volume for new ETFs.
Yeah, put it in perspective compared to others.
This is going to be one of the most historic trading days for new ETFs as a complex. Maybe not the most. Maybe Bitcoin holds that crown for the foreseeable future, but in the grand scheme of things, this is a tremendous amount of interest for new ETFs.
Pomp, you have been a crypto acolyte for years, well before it was de rigueur for a lot of people. But are you buying today? Tell me what you're doing with Ether.
Yeah, I'm not buying any Ether, but I do think that this is a really important moment because the Bitcoin ETF, I think, was kind of the first asset through the threshold. And people said, hey, look, this is going to come to Wall Street. But there was a lot of people who sat there and said, well, it's only going to be Bitcoin, right? It's the only one that's going to get the regulatory approval. Everything else is going to be a security, and it's going to be a long time. With the Ether ETF getting approved, I think now we understand not only, obviously, is Ether going to get that approval and kind of get through the threshold, but it probably signals that there's going to be many other assets as well. And so really what I see happening is there's going to be this blending of the traditional financial system with kind of this crypto ecosystem. And so, the fact that BlackRock is such a big player, many others that also kind of are their, competitors or their colleagues, I think that that's showing us that these assets now have entered into the Wall Street kind of ecosystem, and they're not going to go away. And that gives investors a lot of confidence to go and allocate to them.
Okay, who's next, in your opinion, Pomp?
That's going to be for the regulators to decide. I think that, you can kind of work down the list of largest market cap assets.
Hey, throw me a guess.
Well, VanEck, I think, was the first one to file for a Solana ETF.
Correct.
And so they want that to kind of be the next one. Doesn't mean it will be. But I just think that, any market, they're going to look at market cap. That's a huge part of, is there enough trading volume? Are there enough investors? Is there enough interest for the issuers to actually make money, right, and be able to run a sustainable business and offering these things? I think you will just see them work down that list.
VanEck already filing for Solana. What about BlackRock? Are you looking at the next iteration for these crypto ETFs?
Our focus is on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And one of the reasons why is 75% of the market cap of crypto assets falls within those two assets. So you can get a lot of exposure across the digital asset ecosystem just by looking at those two assets. And that's where we see the most liquidity. That's where we see the most client demand. So that is our focus for the foreseeable future.
Shouldn't we be clear to viewers that Ether is different from Bitcoin? Bitcoin is almost like the digital gold, but Ether is sort of the picks and shovels because it also has this underlying blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain, which basically is one of these platforms that can build up contracts. And if you say this will happen, and it automatically encourages it to go forth. And then there's the actual, I guess, the ledger, which keeps every record of what's going on.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting is Bitcoin has a very clear story. It's kind of digital gold. And I think people across the market, even critics, agree that that is what Bitcoin is. And so naturally, you see people go and they buy it for that reason. Ethereum, there's kind of a bull and a bear case here. The bull case would be, well, people want diversification. It's one of the core tenets of investing in, kind of traditional finance. And so people say, look, I want exposure to crypto, but I don't just want Bitcoin. What else do you have? And so being the second one is pretty important if you're going to be a diversification asset. On the other hand, if people are going to say, hey, evaluate it just on its own, I think the story isn't as clear as Bitcoin. And so there's a lot of people in the Ethereum community that are working hard to try to figure out, hey, how do we go and educate people? What is it? Why should you buy it? And one of the things with these ETFs in particular, a huge reason why people want Ethereum in the spot market is that there is staking. There's some income generation or cash flow that can be generated from it. Right now, that is not able to, if you buy the ETFs, to go get that.
You don't get that.
I do think that that is probably going to change over time. When, I'm not sure. But I think that'll be a second kind of leg for these assets, where if now all of a sudden you can buy it and you can get some yield off of that asset by holding the ETF, that'd be a pretty special moment as well.
Before we go, companies merge all the time. Rivals merge. Do either of you ever envision seeing two cryptos merging? Let's just say Shiba Inu and Doge. I'm just throwing this out there, but is that ever a potential? And then you get an even bigger opportunity for another ETF.
Probably not for the foreseeable future. But again, and Anthony was saying this well, I think diversification across crypto assets is really going to be the focus of investors now that you can get both Bitcoin and Ethereum through ETFs.
I don't think that the cryptos are going to merge, but I do think that the ETF issuers, there's going to be some consolidation. I'm an investor in Bitwise, I'm an investor in 21 Shares, I'm an investor in DeFi Technologies. They all have different ETFs. If BlackRock wants to come write a big enough check, I'm sure they would sell themselves. But no, I do think there'll be some consolidation on the ETF issuer side as people realize, hey, there's capital flowing here. There's a lot of kind of synergies that you can go and do through that consolidation.
Pomp, Jay, it is a historic day. Either way, I think you'd both agree. Thank you very much. Especially considering the Securities and Exchange Commission didn't want any of this. And now they have it.